Welcome.
Mabuhay! Selamat datang!
Tabe!
This is ECOnnected, the podcast where we discuss the interconnectedness of people, culture, and the environment with a focus on Southeast Asian perspectives. We are Ari, Erica, Athene, and Simarni, a group of Southeast Asian youth bounded by our advocacy for the environment.
Each week, we will talk about environmental challenges in Southeast Asia, modern and traditional conservation methods, and ways that you can connect and tune into the environment in a time where humanity continues to lose touch with the natural world.
Welcome back to the EConnected podcast, everyone. This is Ari, your host from Brunei. At EConnected, we always talk about valuing the interconnectedness of people and the environment. Now, for this particular episode, we will zoom into forest systems and its important role to the people of Indonesia. Many indigenous peoples in Indonesia and the whole of Southeast Asia region rely upon resources and services provided by the forests. However, forests are largely threatened and degraded year by year. And so today we have with us a special guest from Indonesia who will talk about the forest with us, Mahardika Putra Purba, better known as Dika. Now, Dika is an assistant professor in the Department of Forestry at the State Agricultural Polytechnic of Kupang, or as they say, Polytani Kupang, in Timor Island. Now, this is located in Indonesia. Now, he is currently involved in Health in Harmony projects in Madagascar and in Borneo, Indonesia, as a program specialist where he is remotely supporting and advising the project team on the ground. He is also an affiliated researcher in the Program for Disease Ecology, Health and Environment at Stanford University and contributor researcher at Planet Lab, Duke University. He holds a bachelor degree in science with majors in forestry engineering from the University of Sumatra Utara in Indonesia and a master's degree in tropical silviculture from Bogor Agricultural University and another master's degree in forest genetics from the University of Zurich. Now, his research work focus on forest genetics, forest conservation, ecosystem restoration, and planetary health approach to conservation and sustainable development. Wow, what a list of experiences here, Kadika. So welcome to our podcast. So for the start of our conversation here, Kadika, what made you pursue the study of forestry?
Yeah. Well, hello everyone, and thank you for having me. For that questions, well, I think in the beginning, I'm just like many Asian youngsters out there, and also considering what most Asian parents wants their children to be, to be a doctor, engineer, accountant, banker, lawyer, and the list goes on and on. And of course, being a forester who studied forestry didn't come to mind at first. Right. Yeah. I remember during the national exam to enter university, I have to choose 3 majors as an options. I choose medicine, engineering, and I don't know what I should choose for my third option. Then randomly I choose forestry. So forestry is not really my first choice, but third option as a backup plan in case the first and the second one is failed, and it is failed. However, when I walk on it, studying it and understand it, it grows on me and it became very interesting. Forestry as a science is not just about the forest itself in physical terms, but it's about living connections. We know that forests are home to over 80% of land animals and plants. It helps sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, cooling the air, and excellent air filters, producing oxygens, and providing significant water for living organizations and many other things that left me in awe, Yeah. So I think I found my way to fall in love with forests. And when you fall in love with something, you wanted to study it more. and to understand it more and also to protect it. So with all the challenge that we've seen today around our forest, I think we ought to protect them. And for me, that is why I continue to study it. And until today, to continue find, my love around forests and to protect them. So I hope that
Yeah,
answer your
that really
question.
answers the question, and I love that you found passion through something that you didn't really have passion about at the beginning, but it's really like commendable and inspiring that it's something that you're currently still doing, and you love what you're doing, and I think that's really important for everyone involved. And also, Dika, we learned that your work is focused on forest genetics. Can you tell us what is it all about and why is it important to study forest genetics? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Before we talk about forest genetics, because it's very complex
Yeah.
terms and science in itself, I would like to mention about genetics first. So each of us, each of the species, either from animal kingdom, plants kingdom, or us humans, contains informations in, our genes that are, that are passed down from one generations to the next. And these genes carry informations that affects the health, the appearance, even the personality of the species. So these genes were in the form of DNA, right? So every living thing has DNA. It's an amazing chemical that presents in every cell. It contains all the informations that cells need to make human a human, tree a tree, animal an animal, So DNA also influences many individual traits, if it's in the tree, such as whether the tree is tall or short, the shape of the trees, the color of the leaf, the bark, and the flowers, for examples. So by studying genetics, we can understand how, if it's the tree, we can understand how the tree supports the species that has been living for 100 years or even 1,000 years have survived in nature. How they were adapted, what genes control their adaptations to changing climate or changing environments. So, and also many, the fact that there are many species out there is disappearing in the nature before we know what their role and function in the ecosystems. So I think it's important to understand or study the genetics to enhance our knowledge and understanding to help saving, the species, especially those that are already endangered or critically endangered. But in forest genetics, it's very complex, as I mentioned in the beginning. It's included three main components that it's needed, included Mendelian or traditional genetics, population genetics, and quantitative genetics. In Mendelian genetics, we studied about segregations, dealing with the inheritance of the traits in relatively small groups and over short periods of time. In population genetics, we studied the genetic behavior, distributions, and changes in large group populations, individual over relatively long periods of times, including responses to natural and artificial selections. And, many traits of this productive and economic importance are controlled by several genes and their interaction, right? And we studied quantitative genetics to assess the genetics and its relations to environmental parameters, including phenotypic genetic variances, and then correlations of genetics itself to, and how they are response to the selection. So it's very complex, but, all in all, we need to study forest genetics to, again, help saving the species, understanding their role and their presence in the nature. And if they are disappearing in nature, we can help them, exist in nature through breeding or an improvement.
Wow, that's a really intriguing subject matter on genes here, Kak Dika. And being a biologist myself, I was just in awe because genes are something new that we scientists have been exploring, and I think it's something that we can also utilize, and something that um, I could see resonate with what you have given and expressed about what genes are and how important it is in the forest. Because understanding truly what they are at the genetic level, then we can really help the disappearing forest that is currently happening in the region. So that's something that's really, like I was just intellectually stimulated, but at the same time, like I was just enjoying um the talk that you gave about genetics and forest genetics. And I think it's an area that we haven't yet explored as much, Karnika, and I hope the viewers would really learn more about it based on your
Yes.
sharing. So that's on the more scientific part. You get me. So this question is more on based on your experiences here, Kak Dika. So how important are forests to the Indonesian people? We heard that you have worked on various conservation projects, right? And we
Yeah.
would like to hear some of your stories to share to the audience that we have currently.
Yes. So yeah, I think I will begin by saying that forests of Indonesia, we know that it is the third largest tropical forest in the world and one of the greatest biodiversity hotspots on Earth, right? And Indonesian forest is also provide economic, social, and environmental benefits for its people. But in the bigger picture, Indonesian forest is actually not just for Indonesian people
Exactly.
itself. It's also for the whole planets, right? Because we're
Yeah.
living in the same planet. So that is one thing that we oftenly forgot. We often keep everything in silo.
Mm,
Malaysian forest is for Malaysian. No, it's not. It in like locally in local context, yes, it is. But in a bigger picture, since we are living in the same planet, we share all of this, together,
exactly.
right? And then I mentioned earlier about biodiversity. We know that biodiversity plays a key role in food security, human health, livelihoods, providing clean water, timber, medicinal plants, and other important, services. And if we lose our rainforests, it's game over for all of us,
Indeed.
right? And we know what forest has done for our lives. And we also need to understand that we cannot be healthy and thrive without healthy and natural ecosystems. So Indonesian forest is not just important for the people of Indonesia, but it's also for the whole world.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then we need to also think that every actions that we're committed to treat this planet or forest wherever we are eventually will affect us all. And you know um apart from the economic and the ecology benefits of the forest, um it also provide a variety of products as well that
Yeah.
we can all share, and also we can all benefit from. And for Indonesian forests for many years has been supported the income of the country, especially from its timber. So yeah, so it leads to later on, how is the state of the forest. But how is the how that's how is important the forest of Indonesian forest, not just for Indonesian but also again from for the entire world.
Exactly.
And for my go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say that, but you can talk, elaborate more on your conservation projects as well, Kak Dika. I think that's
Yes.
something that we.
Yeah, I work as the program director for Yayasan Alam Sehat Lestari, or ASRI, a nonprofit organizations located in West Kalimantan before as a program director. And
Yeah.
we have, projects in Borneo that, we provide health services to the community
Mm.
nearby the forest. So we call this forest conservation based on medical healthcare and community development. So this built up based on the solutions that comes from the community who wanted to protect the forest, but they couldn't. They were often logging for paying for healthcare. So the community said that if they had access to high quality, affordable healthcare and training in organic farming, they could stop logging, and
Mm.
they did. So from that projects, we realized that when people have an access to alternatives, they won't be destructive ecologically. And um, we also understands that these situations were not just happen in Borneo, but also happen in different parts of the world. You mentioned before in my CV that I also involved in project in Madagascar. So
Yes.
what we found in Madagascar, it's mostly similar to what we found in Indonesia. There's always a link between health and conservations.
Yes.
And most of the community who living around rainforest, they often need to choose between their well-being or the nature. Food on the table to support the family, or lush forest
Yeah.
behind, on my backyard or behind my home. So, if we can fulfill what the community need in return for protecting the forests, the community will give it back to us in the form of ecosystems protections and ecosystem services of the rainforest that we all depend on. So this is the project that we were working in Borneo since 2007, and the idea of this, giving healthcare services to the community, and then working together with community, listen with the community, also have been implemented in other parts of the world as well, in Brazil and in Madagascar. And the program itself are now trying to expand to other conservation areas in Papua as well.
Oh, that's really like I think that's something that at the earlier part of your sharing where you said the forests are largely how the world is like running right now, and if we don't have that, and we'll be good as dead. But at the same time, why we have these destructions is because from what I could garner from your sharing was that there's just a lack of access and awareness of like alternatives, right? And if that was resonated well, and if it's something that's really convincing to them that they could make a living from, and I think that's something that we could try to find out the solutions for, and also um, try to change their behavior in that way. And I think that's the project that you're doing, Kak Dika. I think it's something significant, and I believe it has potential to change, various communities in the world to more sustainable practices, and also at the same time conserving the forest systems that we have in the world. And I'm really excited to see more of that in the world right now, because you always hear about lodging in like forests in the Amazon because of people like building their farms and whatnot. So that that's something that I guess with our efforts right here, we want to change that to save the world. So discussing about forests here, Kandika. So um, how is the state of the forest here in Indonesia? What are the biggest threats to the forests currently in Indonesia? Yeah, just a specific question on that matter.
Yeah. So, according to the State of Indonesia's Forest in 2020, published by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry of Republic Indonesia, uh, we have we currently have 120 million hectares of forest left in nature, well, in Indonesia, and that consists of production forests around 68.8 million hectares, conservation forests 20 I think 22.1 million hectares, including marine conservation area, and then protections forest, around 29 million hectares. And then currently our Ministry of Forestry divided the forest estate into 4 different categories based on its functions. Conservation forest, it mostly designated for conservations of plant and animal species, protections forests to serve life support system and maintain regulating services provided by the forest, productions forest, designated for producing forest products, including timber, and conversion forest, which is converted for other land uses. But of course, there's a lot of challenges that still needs to overcome. With the tenure insecurity and overlapping land claims, poor governance, and then weak law enforcements in forest areas, right? And to your questions about what is the biggest threats to the forest, I think for Indonesian forests at the moment, the biggest threats, it's still, the first is encroachment. So it's still work around clarifying the boundaries between different administrative classifications of forest areas needs to continue, and needs to clarify the legal status of certain forest areas, ensuring public legitimacy and recognitions. And then the second threat, it's actually still illegal logging.
Oh.
So illegal logging still account for between 40 to 80% of Indonesians' timber trade.
Wow.
So it's actually costing government of Indonesians billions of dollars in revenue lost every year, right? And then the third threats, it's still forest and land fires. So I think you've heard about it a lot, and I think it's brought up in the news a lot as well. So the significant forest and land fires happened in 2007. 2012 and 2015, and it causing transboundary haze pollutions in the Asian regions, right? And attracting global attention. We've got a lot of complaints from Singapore, Malaysia, even Philippines, I think, and Brunei, our neighbor, right? And then I think the fourth largest threat still is illegal trade in plants and wildlife. Yeah.
Wow. It does seem like, it's such a significant problem in Indonesia, in where I think, as you said, there's a lack of government regulation and also practices that protect these forests. And I guess it's also, from what I could garner, how large illegal logging is and how powerful it is, right? In terms of swaying the current status in the countries, in terms of like actually acquiring the timber from forests that are actually important. So in this regard, right, Kak Dika, so what kinds of forest conservation programs have been implemented in Indonesia? Is it to has it been successful in stymieing the significant problems that you've mentioned? If not, like, what do you think needs to be improved? Particularly.
Yes. Into my knowledge, there are several conservation programs that has been put in place, such as promoting Indonesia green economy model in 2013. So our governments try to promoting green economy model to compare investment in forest preservations and sustainable forest management options, that included 3 main components. I think it's added benefits, cost, and investments. And then there's also this moratorium of oil palm expansions. We know that oil palm is one of the source of forest degradations in Southeast Asia. Rehabilitations of peat ecosystems. This is including restorations of peat ecosystem in concessions area and in community lands, peatland conservations, restorations of forest landscapes, including forest restorations in watershed areas, forest concessions areas, conservation areas, and mangrove. deep engagement with RED Plus, reducing emissions from deforestations and degradations through community plantations forest program, and and there's a lot of other conservations programs that
Yeah.
I think that have been implemented, like moratorium of using forest, natural forest, as well. But of course, there's a lot of things that need to be improved, and our government actually, try their best to come up with all of these plans and strategy. But what we think sometimes it's just on paper. The
Mhm.
implementation is rather different, you
Ah,
know.
yes.
So what needs to be done, I think it's collaborations, like active participations of all stakeholder. So not for government to also seeing different parts of organizations within the communities to be also be involved in the discussions, and because when we think about the problems, we have more problems, right? But
Yes.
when we focus on possibilities, we will have more opportunities. And I would say that collaborations will open more possibilities and opportunities to to reach the purpose of making Indonesian forests still exist, and also protecting Indonesian forests, right?
Mhm.
And also another thing is that um, inclusivity to achieve racial justice is also still very, very it's very limited in terms of discussions in Indonesia itself. Um, so we Indonesian is built, from different
Yes.
racials, from different ethnic backgrounds, different indigenous communities, right? So I think it's still a challenge, and still we need to work on that, on making sure that different voices are heard, that
Yes.
people are respected and valued, especially indigenous community or marginal community that often left out in the discussions, but they are actually the one that their role is very important in protecting
Exactly.
the forest, because they are mostly community that living nearby the forest. They will be the first one that impacted by the loss of the forest, but they also can be the first agent that can help us protecting the forest, right? And
Exactly.
to making sure that that they are in the environments where they can do their best works, and making sure that they've been heard and appreciated as well. And yeah, so I think it's kind of like things that still need to
Mm.
be improved
Mm.
in Indonesia.
Yeah, and like from your sharing just now, Kadika, I think yeah, there are efforts, but obviously like um there's much more to be improved on, and I mean it's an all-round approach as well in government, the people and the corporations, but at the same time like we need to follow through, especially I think the government needs to follow through with what they have put on paper, and I think that's also up to the people to have uh the passion and the initiative to enact this change, right? So that the government actually follows through at the end. So I really think that yeah, from what you've shared, like there's a lot to improve on, and especially I think it's important to be inclusive towards all like communities, because if you don't, like you're missing out on maybe that significant problem that's just stifling the initiatives that you're doing and the effectiveness of it at the same time. So I think that resonated well with me, Kadika, and I think that's also apparent in some parts of the world where these conservation programs are enacted. So with regards to this, Kadika, should we plant more trees? If not, how can our listeners best support the conservation of forest ecosystems?
Well, the short answer is yes.
Yes.
We understand that there's a lot of benefits of planting trees. As I mentioned previously, trees give more, give oxygens for us to breathe. It's improve our air quality. Many species of wildlife depend on trees for habitat. Trees provide food, protections, homes for many birds, mammals, and it reduced the amount of storm of water runoff. It preserve water, and reduce the effects of flooding and many other benefits. Right. So understanding these benefits, the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think tree is the only species now in the world that can help us absorb the carbon dioxide from the
Yeah.
atmosphere and change it into oxygen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and we need oxygens for, for our lives, right? For living, for breathing. And so, yeah, planting trees is important. And whenever you can, can or able to plant trees, please do so. But sometimes the questions that I get is that, what if I don't have enough space for planting trees in my backyard?
Mhm.
What if I'm living in an apartment, I'm living in an apartment that don't even have land, to plant
Yeah.
trees. How can I support planting trees, or how can I be actively involved in planting trees? Well, you can join, planting trees movement. There are many organizations out there that are focusing in planting trees. You can join through volunteering, active
Mhm.
participations, or even donations. So yeah, there's a lot of ways, to join the crowds.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, to the listeners out there, yeah, if you have space, just plant more trees. If not, you join your local organization where they do plant forest planting efforts or tree planting efforts, what I meant to say. So yeah, and I think that's a lot you can help with even if you don't have space to plant your trees at your own backyard. So with this, Khalifa, do you have any further advice for aspiring foresters like yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I have several actually. I hope that
Okay, go ahead.
the listeners can relate it to. I think the first one is to change your perspective,
Mm,
because when you change your perspective, you change your lens. We often think that human is above all, that we are the lord of
yeah.
everything, on this earth, right? But we are not.
Mm,
Human is a part of these ecosystems, and we need to understand that. And I think the pandemic of COVID-19 teach us a lot about what is our positions in the nature. That we're not highly than a virus, right? So
yes. Exactly.
yeah, and then second, I think find like-minded people and join the movement.
Mm,
So active participations on problem solving. There are so many environmental campaign that our listeners can join these days. There's one Youth Act Kalimantan. Youth leadership for climate crisis. There's a lot of camps. Friday for Future, Climate Reality Project, Zero Waste Campaign. There's so many campaigns that you can choose and you can join out there. So find one and then join the movement. And then, you need to educate yourself as well. By educating ourselves, we increase our knowledge, our understanding about the issue. Whatever the issue is that you are focusing on or interesting in. Forest degradations, climate change, climate crisis, forest conservations. You know, or anything else. Because when you educate yourself, yeah, we hope that it will changing your character, changing your behavior, and you can be, more care and empathy towards the nature that you're living in, the planet that you're living in, and then you can change your behavior from being ignorance to being care. And then the next one is to find your purpose. What is your purpose?
Yes.
In all of this madness that happens in the world, what is your purpose, and how can you contribute, to your purpose? Always remember that purpose is usually one, but the actions or ways can be so many. So if it's not working this way around, we're probably working other way around. But your purpose is, for example, my purpose is to fight for climate change, to fight for the existence of the forest in my country. Then I can do this, and this. If you're loving writing, you can do it through writing. You can do it through writing poems, lyrics, books. You can do it through your business, more sustainable business. Through your teaching, if you're a lecturer, teaching your students, and then through your talents, for example. There's a lot of way, to get into actions, and to
Yeah.
fulfill your purpose. And last but not least is to listen. So listen is something that that is disappearing from the community these days.
Yeah.
So always listening to whom? Listening to yourself, listening to your community, listening to your elder. That is one thing that I learned so much during my time in Borneo, in Kalimantan, that we are having this close relationship with our elder, or with our ancestor. So, listening, and then, you know, listening to what they need, what your community needs. Often when we implemented program, whatever the program is or the project is, we kind of like bring our background, our educations, our knowledge into perspective without asking communities what they need. Sometimes they don't need it,
Yeah.
and these communities knows what is best for them. So listen to them if you wanted to help them. So I think that's what I can say to all of the listeners out there.
Wow, Kadipa. I think that's something that I think everyone would take into account. Find your own purpose in your own state of being. Be an advocate in your local community. Be well informed, and be an active listener, and also humble towards the problem that we're facing. And I think that's something that a lot of people will be inspired by from your advice. So, Kadika, that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you for sharing your insights on forests with us today. So, for our
For having
listeners,
me.
yeah, for our listeners out there, we will see you in the next episode. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode. We would like to thank the Mansfield Center and the YCD program for making this podcast possible.
If you wanted to learn more about the ECOnnected podcast, do follow and subscribe to our social media channel linked in the description box below.
See you next time.
Jumpa lagi.
Paalam.
Selamat Panalu.